Now in order to consider amendment number 111, printed in Part A of House Report 119-199. For what purpose does the gentlewoman from Georgia seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, I have an amendment at the desk.
The clerk will designate the amendment.
Amendment number 111, printed in Part A of House Report number 119-199, offered by Ms. Greene of Georgia.
Pursuant to House Resolution 580, the gentlewoman from Georgia, Ms. Greene, and a member opposed will control 5 minutes each. The chair recognizes the gentlewoman from Georgia.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We support our great men and women in our military, and we want to fund them to have the best equipment, be afforded the best housing, the best pay, and to be treated the best among the world. But I have an amendment today that would strike $118 million of funding to overseas humanitarian disaster and civic aid programs of the Department of Defense. These accounts fund programs for humanitarian assistance in foreign countries, in other nations, for foreign peoples, humanitarian mine action programs, foreign disaster relief, for foreign countries and foreign peoples that the American people are having to pay for. And I want to remind everyone, the American people are $37 trillion in debt because of this institution and the way Congress has spent their money. Think about our own national disasters and problems that we face here at home, the American taxpayer faces. Hurricane Helene, Hurricane Milton, the Lahaina wildfires, the LA wildfires, the Texas flooding, where there are still over 100 missing people, the opioid epidemic, the fentanyl epidemic, and all over the country, people are suffering. The American people voted to put America first. And Mr. Speaker, the American people are still being put last. Right now, the average health insurance premium for a family has risen by 22% since 2018. Fentanyl still kills hundreds of people every single day in America. And more than 32,000 veterans, people who served in our military, were homeless in 2024. And there were 6,407 suicides among Americans in 2022. This is unacceptable. In our Department of Defense appropriations funding, we should be funding for our military and not paying for funding for humanitarian aid in crisis in foreign countries. America simply cannot afford it anymore. Mr. Speaker, I reserve.
Gentlelady reserves.
Any member seek time? For what purpose, Minnesota?
For what purpose does the gentlelady from Minnesota seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, I rise in opposition to this amendment.
Gentlewoman is recognized for 5 minutes.
This program is designed to assure that our allies and partners of the U.S. are supported in times of trouble. This funding provides basic humanitarian aid and essential services to the populations in need. Let's talk about what it does for America's national security. This program is an important tool for our combatant commanders who use this to assist our allies, and it builds and cements our relationships. Let me just give you a few examples. When we help our allies improve their capacity to prepare and to respond for a crisis that will take place, when we help implement the Humanitarian Mine Action Program, this provides significant training, readiness, and enhanced benefits even to our United States military. It contributes to alleviating the worldwide problem of explosive remnants of war, which includes landmines, unexploded ordnance, and small arms munitions. The program allows our military to hone their critical wartime and military civilian skills, language, culture, and foreign international defense skills. And finally, through the Foreign Disaster Relief Program, a program executed by our combatant commanders, we provide a unique assistance during natural and man-made disasters when interagency support is requested. DoD's ability to respond rapidly with extensive manpower, transportation, communication capabilities is critically important in a time of crisis. When we assist in filling in these capability gaps with our partners, when we help contain the crisis and limit the threats to regional stability by providing relief aid within hours or with even days of a disaster, Each of these programs are vital to the success of our battalion commanders' relationships with their counterparts. Cutting these funds would lessen the ability of our armed forces to execute their missions. For these reasons, I oppose this amendment, and I ask my colleagues to do the same. But, Mr. Chair, I'd like to yield 30 seconds to the chairman of the committee, Mr. Calvert.
Thank the gentlelady. This
yield.
amendment strikes all
Recognized.
funding for overseas humanitarian disaster and civil aid account. The funding is used by DoD to assist during humanitarian disasters. The funding is also used when specialized DoD experience is needed, such as detection and clearance of landmines, unexploded explosive ordnance, and other explosive remnants of war, which even to this day we are cleaning up World War II remnants. The President's budget, President Trump's budget request includes just over $100 million in funding for this account. I urge a no vote on this amendment and reserve the balance of my time.
Chairman reserves. Gentleman has no time to reserve. Yields back. The gentlelady from Minnesota is recognized.
I would reserve my time.
Gentlewoman reserves. Gentlelady from Georgia is now recognized.
Mr. Speaker, the American people are $37 trillion in debt. The Department of Defense's mission statement is to deter war and ensure our nation's security. That is their mission, and that is exactly what their funding should be for. I'd like to ask, what foreign country showed up to help Americans in our need, in our time of distress, in our humanitarian crises? Which foreign country has come to clean up the hundreds of people that die every single day on the streets from fentanyl? Which foreign country showed up to defend our border as we were invaded by millions of people for the past 4 years? Which foreign country said, here, America, here's millions and billions of dollars to help you? I'm going to tell you, zero. Zero foreign countries showed up. And here we are again, while the American people are enslaved by $37 trillion in debt, a debt we can never climb out of, but yet a debt that continues to rise because here in Congress, we go by this belief that we have to fund every foreign country all around the world. And I say enough. And the American people say enough. Right now, Americans can't afford their rent. Young people cannot afford to buy a home. Ask any 20-year-old, 30-year-old and ask them if they believe they will ever be a homeowner. And their answer overwhelmingly is no. Americans can't afford their bills. They can't afford car insurance, health insurance, homeowners insurance. And life does not look good in the future. But you want to know why? Inflation is high. Do you want to know why life continues to be unaffordable? Because Congress cannot rein in its America Last spending. It cannot stop, and it refuses to stop. It continues to say yes to the lobbyists for the military-industrial complex. It continues to say yes to every lobbyist that walks in this institution as congressmen and women take donations into their campaign accounts. Americans are the most generous in the world. Americans can donate through charities to foreign countries to help foreign issues and foreign people. But the American people should not be forced to write the check, and the Department of Defense should be able to focus on their mission to deter war and ensure our nation's security. Mr. Speaker, I ask my colleagues to support this amendment, and I yield.
Gentlelady yields. Gentlelady from Minnesota is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I would just like to point out again that when we do these projects together with our allied nations, it provides significant training, access, and readiness enhancement benefits to the United States military. Mr. Speaker, the question was asked on this House floor, who came to our aid? Who stood for the United States? I was here on September 11th, serving in Washington, D.C., my first term in Congress. NATO. The world came to our aid. The world came and helped us when we fought against the Taliban. And with that, Mr. Chair, I thank those nations for standing with us, and I look forward to working with them in the future in this type of partnership, and I yield back.
Gentlelady yields back. The question is on the amendment offered by the gentleman from California. My apologies, from the gentlewoman from Georgia. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed say no. In the opinion of the chair, the noes have it.
Mr. Speaker, I ask for a recorded vote.
Gentlelady asks for a recorded vote pursuant to Clause 6 of Rule 18. Further proceedings on the amendment offered by the gentlewoman from Georgia will be postponed. It is now in order to consider amendment number 112, printed in Part A of House Report 119-199. For what purpose does the gentlewoman from Georgia seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, I have an amendment at the desk.
The clerk will designate the amendment.
Amendment number 112, printed in Part A of House Report number 119-199, offered by Ms. Greene of Georgia.
Pursuant to House Resolution 580, the gentlewoman from Georgia, Ms. Greene, and a member opposed, each will control 5 minutes. The chair now recognizes the gentlewoman from Georgia.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As the House considers funding $831 billion to the Department of Defense for the funding of our great men and women in our military to defend our nation and our nation's interest, it's important to talk about the foreign aid that we are funding to foreign countries. The American people are $37 trillion in debt. $37 trillion in debt. The debt keeps rising, and the interest on our debt is at $1 trillion now per year. $1 trillion. My amendment would strike $500 million of military assistance to Taiwan. This is an increase of $100 million from fiscal year 2025 and will be used to provide a wide variety of assistance, including planes, drones, missile defense, munitions, and more. Listen to this, as we're giving an extra $100 million, making it $500 million in this Department of Defense Appropriations bill, the entire defense budget of Taiwan is less than $20 billion. Our defense budget is $831 billion. It wouldn't be so high if we weren't giving foreign aid. We've given Taiwan over $2 billion in funding and munitions over the past 2 years. We've already given them $2 billion, but now we're giving them another $500 billion. Increasing foreign aid to Taiwan will only increase their reliance on the United States. And the United States should be serving the American people and stop enslaving the American people in massive debt that drives the inflation that is causing Americans to suffer, that is causing Americans to not be able to afford everyday life. The United States is $37 trillion in debt, and we can't even hardly afford our own massive military budget, let alone funding the significant portions of other countries, of foreign countries, and foreign nations, and foreign people that do not pay taxes here in America. We have so many of our own domestic problems here at home and should not be funding foreign countries, foreign aids, and quite frankly, instigating World War III with China. Before we start worrying about Taiwan's borders or Ukraine's borders or any other country's borders, we should be focusing on the continued security of our own border and deporting the criminals and terrorists and millions of people that invaded our country and are somewhere within our country after they invaded our own borders. Mr. Speaker, I reserve.
Gentlelady reserves. For what purposes does the gentleman from California seek recognition?
I rise in opposition to the gentlelady's amendment.
Gentleman is recognized for 5 minutes.
I greatly admire the gentlelady from Georgia's passion for ensuring support for our overseas allies, our wise use of taxpayers' dollars, but support for Taiwan must be part of that equation. Just yesterday, the Trump administration released a statement of administration policy for the Defensive Appropriation Bill, very supportive of the bill we produced. One of the very few areas the administration expressed any slight disagreement with our bill was wanting more money for Taiwan. The administration has proposed including $1 billion, while this bill provides $500 million. Now, had OMB delivered budget materials to us in time for consideration, we would have certainly taken a look at providing what they requested, but that wasn't the case. Supporting Taiwan in the face of unrelenting Chinese aggression is absolutely in the vital interests of the United States. I want to point out that Taiwan makes 90% of the world's chips and close to 100% of the highly needed chips for artificial intelligence and high technical devices. The funding will go a long way to make sure that Taiwan has the resources necessary to help prevent a Chinese invasion. That's the position of the Trump administration, and that's the position of this bill. With that, I urge a no vote on the amendment and reserve the balance of my time. And I yield 2 minutes to the ranking member, the gentlelady from Minnesota.
Gentlelady is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, I am very, very proud of my vote to vote against the President's big tax package, which added $3.4 trillion debt to our national debt over the next 10 years. But right now I'm rising in opposition to this amendment. America's strength around the world does not only stem from our military power, but our network of alliances in Europe and the Pacific that allow us to project power. Our allies support us, and we support them. That means when our allies are threatened, the United States needs to be with them. That's exactly what we're doing in Ukraine, helping a sovereign nation defend itself against defend its democracy from Russian aggression. A similar situation could easily occur in the Pacific, where Taiwan is threatened by the People's Republic of China. China has a recent history of seizing territory. Look at the invasion of Tibet in the 1950s. They've suppressed democracy in Hong Kong. And when the Chinese president speaks of reunification of Taiwan, we should believe that he will attempt it. We cannot allow that to happen. China may not stop with Taiwan. If Taiwan falls, other Pacific island nations like the Philippines would be threatened. And America is not alone in these concerns. Japan, South Korea, Australia, New Zealand are deeply concerned about the future of Taiwan's democracy. And that's why they're working with us to deter China and to prevent an invasion of Taiwan from happening. The $500 million in this bill will assist Taiwan in preparing their military, increasing their readiness and their deterrence capabilities. So I support the inclusion of the funds in this bill, and I strongly oppose this amendment. I ask my colleagues to do the same, and I yield back.
Gentlelady yields. The gentlewoman from Georgia is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The best way to compete with China is have a strong American economy. We shouldn't be having to fund the protection of a foreign country that is producing over 90% of our chips when we should be producing those chips right here at home. Currently, many of our rare earth minerals are tied up on federal lands, and this is a problem that is tying up the production of chips here in America. You see, America should be building our strength and resilience. Instead of an additional $500 million being given to Taiwan for their defense budget, we should be investing that $500 million into America's ability to produce chips, so that we don't have to be the world's police that go defend all these other foreign countries from China's aggression. The best way to beat China is with a strong America. But decades of America-last policies where our manufacturing jobs were sent overseas and sent to China is what made China strong. America created that problem. And America is continuing to create that problem by dependence on foreign countries for our own manufacturing. This is why rural America has been crumbling for decades, because of the economic loss of their own small towns. In America today, the cost of college tuition has increased by over 180%. That means it's unaffordable for many students, and they're laden with student loan debt. According to American Compass in 1985, 40 weeks of a typical worker's income could provide the middle-class essentials for a family of 4. But now, this requires over 62 weeks of income, exceeding the 52 weeks in a year. Life is unaffordable for Americans, Mr. Speaker. We're $37 trillion in debt. I urge my colleagues to vote for my amendment, and I yield.
Gentlelady yields. Gentleman from California.
Yield.
Gentleman yields. Question is on the amendment offered by the gentlewoman from Georgia. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. In the opinion of the chair,
Mr.
the noes
Speaker,
have it.
I ask for the recorded vote.
The gentlelady asked for a recorded vote. Pursuant to Clause 6 of Rule 18, further proceedings on the amendment offered by the gentlewoman from Georgia will be postponed. Keep that one. is now in order to consider amendment number 113, printed in Part A of House Report 119-199. For what purpose does the gentlewoman from Georgia seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, I have an amendment at the desk.
The clerk will designate the amendment.
Amendment number 113, printed in Part A of House Report number 119-199, offered by Ms. Greene of Georgia.
Pursuant to House Resolution 580, the gentlewoman from Georgia, Ms. Greene, and a member opposed, each will control 5 minutes. The chair now recognizes the gentlewoman from Georgia.
Mr. Speaker, as we're debating today the $831 billion defense appropriation bill, it's important to talk about the foreign aid that is in this bill and why it must be stopped. The American people are $37 trillion in debt, and this institution is to blame for it. You see, it's Congress and the men and women that serve in Congress that can never say no to every single lobbyist and every single foreign country that walks in their office. My amendment today, would strike the funding for HIV prevention education activities in foreign countries. This bill provides at least $15 million for HIV prevention educational activities undertaken in connection with the United States military training, exercises, and humanitarian assistance activities conducted primarily in African nations. My amendment would strike this provision to ensure that taxpayer dollars are not being wasted teaching African soldiers about how to have safe sex. I mean, this is an issue that should be resolved by now. The U.S. already spends a massive amount of money on HIV/AIDS, primarily through PEPFAR, the President's Emergency Plan for AIDS Relief. To date, U.S. funding for PEPFAR has totaled over $120 billion. That's $120 billion that the American people do not have, that never helped them solve any of their problems. This has grown from $1.9 billion in fiscal year 2004 to $6.5 billion in fiscal year 2025. Additionally, the National Security Department of State and related programs appropriations bill released this week would provide $5.8 billion to prevent and treat HIV/AIDS globally. When the American people are $37 trillion in debt, their credit cards are maxed out. Young people in America have no hope for the future. Why are we continually paying for HIV prevention activities and education in Africa and other foreign countries? And how does this provide for the defense of our nation? It doesn't. Again, the American people are some of the most generous people in the world. They donate to charities, causes, and all types of organizations and foundations to help people. This should be a private donation out of the generousness of their heart. It shouldn't be part of our defense appropriation bill that's already $831 billion. When do we ever look at the balance sheet? When do the American people's empty pockets ever matter to Congress, Mr. Speaker? I reserve.
Gentlelady reserves. Gentlewoman from Minnesota is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in opposition to the amendment. The Department of Defense works with partner militaries around the world to advance regional stability and mutual security. These foreign military forces must be healthy and functional to effectively engage with our forces and support these missions. But the HIV/AIDS epidemic has a devastating impact on many countries, including on their militaries. It reduces readiness, units deployments become limited, it saps the morale and capabilities of the infected individuals and in their communities. DoD's HIV/AIDS prevention program pairs health and security assistance to provide care and treatment in concert with military training, exercises, and humanitarian activities. This amendment would eliminate a successful military-to-military HIV/AIDS prevention, care, and treatment efforts in more than 55 countries. In doing so, it would increase the burden, the risk for American forces, weaken global security by reducing the capacity of our partners' forces. And for these reasons, I will urge defeat of this amendment. And, Mr. Chair, I would like to yield Mr. Calvert 30 seconds.
The gentleman is recognized.
Thank the gentlelady. The amendment strikes $15 million for HIV prevention education activities undertaken in connection with the United States military training, exercises, and humanitarian assistance activities conducted primarily in African nations. This funding supports the Defense Health Program, and those funds are credited with scaling back AIDS epidemic in Africa. This program has long enjoyed support across party lines, and with that, I yield back.
Gentleman yields back.
Mr. Chair, I
Gentlelady from
reserve.
Minnesota's. Gentlelady from Minnesota reserves. The gentlewoman from Georgia is now recognized.
How much time do I have remaining, Mr. Speaker?
Gentlelady has 2 minutes remaining.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. While the Defense Appropriations Bill funds $15 million for HIV prevention educational activities undertaken in connection with the United States military training exercises and humanitarian assistance activities conducted primarily in Africa, I want to talk about something that is plaguing Black Americans today. According to the Department of Education, 85% of Black students lack proficiency in mathematics and reading skills. That's appalling. That is a failure of our education system to Black Americans. But in the Department of Defense Appropriations Act, we're supposed to send $15 million to teach soldiers and teach them how to avoid getting AIDS? Isn't this already known? This has been going on for years and years and years, and we're having to pay for that. Why are the American people that are $37 trillion in debt having to pay for people in Africa, soldiers in Africa, to tell them how to avoid getting AIDS? When our own Black students here in America, 85% of them lack proficiency in mathematics and reading skills, which is extremely important for their success in their adult life. Furthermore, there are entire high schools in our cities where not a single student scores proficiently on a standardized test. But the most important thing we can do is send $15 million to teach adult soldiers in Africa how to not get AIDS? This is insanity. And this is the exact America Last spending that the American people are fed up with. Mr. Speaker, at what point does sanity enter the halls of Congress? Because it hasn't been here for a very long time. Mr. Speaker, I urge my colleagues to vote for this amendment to at least save the American people $15 million or help students in America. I yield.
Gentlelady yields. Gentlewoman from Minnesota is recognized.
Well, Mr. Chair, I agree with the gentlewoman from Georgia. We need to do more for our children here at home. I fail to see how cutting the Department of Education, canceling grants, some of them in my district for special education teachers, ending the AmeriCorps help that our schools were getting with many students having someone to sit with them and help them with extra one-on-one for reading and for math to help them succeed. The cuts to SNAP. I used to teach. The last thing you want is a child with a hungry stomach in your classroom because they're more focused on what they didn't eat than learning. So, Mr. Chair, there's more we can do, and that's another reason why I'm so glad I didn't vote for the president's tax cut. But I just want to reiterate again that this mill-to-mill training builds resilience, support, and respect between the militaries. It keeps their militaries healthy, and with that, I continue to oppose this amendment, and I yield back.
Gentlelady yields back. The question is on the amendment offered by the gentlewoman from Georgia. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. In the opinion of the chair, the noes have it.
I ask for the recorded vote.
Gentlelady calls for a recorded vote. Pursuant to Clause 6 of Rule 18, further proceedings on the amendment offered by the gentlewoman from Georgia will be postponed. It is now in order to consider amendment number 114, printed in Part A of House Report 119-199. For what purpose does the gentlewoman from Georgia seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, I have an amendment at the desk.
The clerk will designate the amendment.
Amendment number 114, printed in Part A of House Report number 119-199, offered by Ms. Greene of Georgia.
Pursuant to House Resolution 580, the gentlewoman from Georgia, Ms. Greene, and a member opposed, each will control 5 minutes. The chair recognizes the gentlewoman from Georgia.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As the House considers the defense appropriation bill today that costs the American people $831 billion, it's important to talk about that this is the funding for our great men and women serving in our military and our nation's defense. The Department of Defense's mission statement is to deter war and ensure our nation's security, and that is worthy of the American people's hard-earned tax dollars. However, the American people are $37 trillion in debt, so this is money that is being spent that they already don't have. My amendment would strike $500 million in funding for nuclear-armed Israel's missile defense system. And it's important to phrase it that way. Israel is a nuclear-armed nation, which is very capable of defending themselves, and they have been proving that so as we've watched on the world stage. The U.S. already provides Israel with $3.8 billion annually in foreign aid. $3.8 billion, that's a lot of money. Additionally, the April 2024 Security Supplemental included $8.7 billion for Israel, that is nuclear-armed Israel. And during the recent 12-day war, the U.S. used 15 to 20% of our terminal high-altitude area defense missiles stockpiles defending nuclear-armed Israel, which cost us over $800 million. The $500 million provided in this bill will fund Israel's, that is nuclear-armed Israel's, missile defense system, the Iron Dome, David Sling, Arrow system. Yet Israel is a nuclear-armed nation. That's a pretty big deterrent for any of their enemies. Any nation that has a nuclear bomb has the greatest threat against their enemies. U.S. aid typically accounts for 15 to 20% of Israel's defense budget, even though Israel, nuclear-armed Israel, has universal health care for their citizens and subsidized college for their citizens. They're able to provide that. However, here in America, we're $37 trillion in debt. My amendment to strike $500 million in foreign aid will ensure an America First Department of Defense, and that is exactly what we need and we haven't had for a very long time. Mr. Speaker, I reserve.
Gentlelady reserves. For what purposes does the gentleman from California seek recognition?
I rise in opposition to the amendment.
Gentleman is recognized.
The gentlelady's amendment would strike $500 million in funding for the vital Israeli missile defense capability. Over the past 2 years, Israel repeatedly has been attacked by Iran and its terrorist proxy groups, Hezbollah, Hamas, and the Houthis. Each time, these groups have vowed to destroy the state of Israel. The United States have affirmed our resolve to stand with Israel by helping defend against the recent missile raids launched by Iran against Israel's civilian population. The success of Israel's robust missile defense capability is in part because these funds were provided in this bill and prior bills. Furthermore, this funding benefits our own missile defense industrial base as it provides for co-production activities and shared technology development. It's certainly to our mutual advantage. With that, I urge a no vote on the amendment and reserve the balance of my time.
Gentleman reserves.
Oh, would yield 90 seconds to the ranking member and gentlelady from Minnesota.
Gentleman yields. The gentleman reserves. The gentlelady from Minnesota is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I rise in opposition to this amendment. To be clear, I have disagreements with Prime Minister Netanyahu's government. Israel totally had the right to defend itself after the heinous attacks on October 7th, and all the hostages should come home. But the Israeli military campaign has been an absolute tragedy for the people of Palestine. The people of Gaza are in desperate need of more humanitarian relief, which I strongly support. But the funding in this bill does not support offensive weapons for Israel. That's funding in a separate appropriations bill. This bill provides for defensive measures only, like Iron Dome, which I support. Safety is what everyone in the region deserves. Israeli children deserve to go to bed at night knowing that missiles from Yemen, Iran, or from the Houthis or anywhere else in the region will not rain down on them. And Palestinian children deserve to go to bed at night knowing that their schools, their hospitals, and their homes will not be bombed. And that's what we all need to work towards, peace. I urge the defeat of this amendment, and I yield back.
Gentlelady yields. Gentlewoman from Georgia is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Israel is a nuclear-armed nation, and they're less than $400 billion in debt. They are quite a thriving and successful nation. Their economy is strong. They're doing a great job for their people. However, the United States, the American citizens, are $37 trillion in debt. Yet we're continuing to send hundreds of billions of dollars in foreign aid constantly to foreign countries. This has to end at some point. Our problems here at home for Americans and the American taxpayer that are paying for all of this have gotten too large. And I also want to point out that Israel bombed a Catholic church in Gaza, and that an entire population is being wiped out as they continue their aggressive war in Gaza. Now, we are heartfelt about the October 7th tragedy, that when people were killed, innocent people were killed. However, at some point, the United States needs to recognize that Israel is a strong country. They are nuclear armed, and they are capable of defeating their own enemies. It's right to stop funding this, as we give them $3.8 billion every single year anyways. Mr. Speaker, I ask for support for my amendment, and I yield the remainder of my time.
Gentlewoman yields back. The gentleman from California is
I
recognized.
yield 60 seconds to the gentleman from Florida.
Gentleman from Florida is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I rise in opposition to this America Last amendment and reject the premise of the arguments that are being made. There are 600,000 Americans who live in Israel, and one rocket has been fired against every 23 of them. 26,000 rockets since October 7th. 43 Americans killed. On October 7th, 12 taken hostage. But more importantly, the research that this fund is the premise behind the Golden Dome. When we support research and development for the Iron Dome, we are creating the capability for the United States to defend itself as well. And I have news. We have a nuclear weapon, too. That doesn't get you off the hook with those who are out to get you. When we pass this, when we oppose this amendment, when we vote it down, we are not only standing with Israel, we are standing with the best interests of the United States. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Gentleman yields.
Yield back to balance my time.
Gentleman yields back the balance of his time. Okay. The question is on the amendment offered by the gentlewoman from Georgia. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. In the opinion of the chair, the noes have it.
Mr. Speaker, I ask for a recorded vote.
The gentlelady asked for a recorded vote pursuant to Clause 6 of Rule 16. Further proceedings on the amendment. Pursuant to the Clause 6 of Rule 18, further proceedings on the amendment offered by the gentlewoman from Georgia will be postponed. Thank you. It is now in order to consider amendment number 115, print Part A of House Report 119-199. For what purpose does the gentlewoman from Georgia seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, I have an amendment at the desk.
The clerk will designate the amendment.
Amendment number 115, printed in Part A of House Report number 119-199, offered by Ms. Greene of Georgia.
Pursuant to House Resolution 580, the gentlewoman from Georgia, Ms. Greene, and a member opposed, each will control 5 minutes. The chair now recognizes the gentlewoman from Georgia.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, as we are considering the defense appropriations bill that cost the American people $831 billion, it is important to consider the amount of foreign funding that we are spending every single year. The American people are $37 trillion in debt. Life in America has become unaffordable, especially for our youngest generations. This amendment would strike $500 million in military assistance to Jordan. This bill provides up to $500 million in military assistance to support the armed forces of Jordan. However, our Department of Defense mission statement is to deter war and ensure our nation's security. My amendment would strike this provision to ensure that our defense appropriation bill funds only our military, not foreign militaries. Why does our Department of Defense appropriations bill continue to pay for other countries' militaries? Furthermore, the National Security, Department of State, and Related Programs Appropriations Bill released this week already provides for an additional $1.65 billion in aid to Jordan. So why are we giving them another $500 million in our appropriations bill for our Department of Defense? Congress has appropriated between $1.5 billion and $1.65 billion in economic and military aid annually to Jordan since 2018. Annually. We're already sending them billions and billions and billions of dollars as the American people continue to tumble further and further and further in a graveyard of debt. $37 trillion is a debt that we don't think we'll ever be able to claw our way out of. However, it's this institution and the irresponsible continued spending year after year after year that continues to enslave the American people in debt. At what point do our military bases in the Middle East and around the world make our country safer? In America today, there are still hundreds of the American people dying every single day from fentanyl that has come from China, and the cartels create and depress pills and other drugs and smuggle into our country. It's time to put the American people first, Mr. Speaker, and it's time to finally consider the drastic amount of spending that we spend every single year in foreign aid. Mr. Speaker, I reserve.
Gentlelady reserves. Gentleman, for what purposes, gentleman from California?
I rise in opposition to the gentlelady's amendment.
Gentleman is recognized.
Jordan remains an indispensable ally in an extremely dangerous region. Our partnership with the Kingdom of Jordan is critical both to the regional and U.S. and national security. We must continue to ensure Jordan can counter extremist terrorist threats, have the resources necessary to continue their role as the linchpin in the region. With that, I urge a no vote on the amendment and reserve the balance of my time. With that, I yield 90 seconds to the ranking member and the gentlelady from Minnesota.
Gentlelady is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in opposition to the amendment. Jordan's a long-standing, reliable ally in the region, as the chair pointed out. And when there's any type of incident in the region, our national security officials, from CENTCOM generals to diplomats, first contact that they make is to get the temperature of the region from their Jordan counterparts. The United States and Jordan have, since 1996, a status of force agreements and a 2006 acquisition and cross-service training agreement and a 2021 defense cooperation agreement. This is a 30-year stability-built relationship in the Middle East with an Arab partner, and we need to nurture and maintain it. We've deployed military personnel to Jordan to support operations that defeated ISIS, to enhance Jordan's security, and to promote regional stability. Jordan air bases have been particularly important for U.S. to conduct intelligence, surveillance, and target acquisition, and reconnaissance missions in Syria and Iraq. Just 2 weeks ago, our U.S. Central Commander traveled to Jordan, where he met with the chairman of the Jordan Joint Chief of Staff and key staff. They discussed the evolving security situation in the region, the deepening bilateral defense relationship between the United States and Jordan, and further expand in the military-to-military relationship between Jordan's armed forces and ours. This partnership continues to serve as a steadfast, capable, strategic partner for peace and stability in the region, and we need strong allies. Jordan's been and continues to be one of our strongest, and for this reason, I oppose this amendment. I ask my colleagues to do the same, and I yield back.
Gentlelady yields back. Gentleman from Georgia is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. With the American people $37 trillion in debt, and we are weighing whether we should send another $500 million to Jordan after they have already received $1.65 billion in another appropriations request, and they receive already another $1.65 billion every single year from the American taxpayer who can hardly afford to pay their bills. Let's talk about America's veterans. You know, for the past several decades, we have men and women in our country, great men and women, who served in our military, but yet were shipped over to some foreign war in the Middle East. That didn't defend America's border. Our border continued to be overrun by foreign people from all over the world. But they were sent over there to fight for our freedoms, and you know what they came home with? They came home with physical injuries that they have to live with the rest of their life, and they came home with PTSD and mental injuries that they live with for the rest of their life. And unfortunately, they have a suicide rate of over 22 a day. Over 6,400 veterans committed suicide in 2022, and 32,000 veterans were homeless in 2024. Yet the debate is about sending another $500 million for the defense of Jordan, and that's a country I guarantee you most Americans can't even find on a map. But most Americans have a veteran in their family or their friends that suffers every single day from this country's continued pursuit of foreign wars and funding foreign wars. Mr. Speaker, enough of the foreign aid and foreign wars and funding for the security of foreign borders that have nothing to do with our own borders and our own American people and the $37 trillion in debt that's killing us. Mr. Speaker, I ask my colleagues to support my amendment, and I yield the remainder of my time.
Gentlelady yields. Gentleman from California. Gentleman from California yields. The question is on the amendment offered by the gentlewoman from Georgia. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed say no. In the opinion of the chair, the noes have it.
I ask for the recorded vote.
Gentlelady asks for a recorded vote. Pursuant to Clause 6 of Rule 18, further proceedings on the amendment offered by the gentlewoman from Georgia will be postponed. It is now in order to consider amendment number 116, printed in Part A of House Report 119-199. For what purpose does the gentlewoman from Georgia seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, I have an amendment at the desk.
The clerk will designate the amendment.
Amendment number 116, printed in Part A of House Report number 119-199, offered by Ms. Greene of Georgia.
Pursuant to House Resolution 580, the gentlewoman from Georgia, Ms. Greene, and a member opposed, each will control 5 minutes. The chair recognizes the gentlewoman from Georgia.
Mr. Speaker, as we're considering the Department of Defense appropriations of 2025, that is going to cost the American people $831 billion. My amendment would be that none of the funds made available in this act may be used for the assistance to the Ukraine war. This is a war that has nothing to do with America. Ukraine is not a NATO member nation, and is not the American people's responsibility to pay for this war, and it's not the American military's responsibility to fund it. My amendment would ensure that no further resources will be sent to Ukraine. To date, Congress has provided nearly $175 billion in assistance to Ukraine, including direct military aid, funding for their government, and other forms of economic assistance. For the past 4 years, we had a Democrat president that cared more about the borders of Ukraine than the country he swore to protect, the United States of America. They allowed our own country to be invaded by murderers, rapists, and terrorists, all while sending nearly $175 billion to defend the borders of Ukraine and fund their entire economy. Our country funded their government at $1 billion a month, and the American people were forced to pay for their businesses. At a time when our government shut down American-owned businesses, families could not afford groceries, and our people were suffering. It was reported that nightlife in Ukraine was thriving, and that there were more bars and restaurants open in the capital city, Kyiv, than before the start of the war. Yet the American people, they couldn't send their children to school, their businesses were shut down, and life here was closed, but the American people were paying for Ukraine. It was shameful that Americans were forced to foot the bill of the Ukrainian economy while ours suffered. Furthermore, Ukraine is one of the most corrupt governments in the world, and Zelensky is a dictator who, by the way, stopped elections in his country because of this war. He's jailed journalists, he's canceled his elections, controlled state media, and persecuted Christians. The American people should not be forced to continue to pay for another foreign war in a country that has no effect on our own and we are not contractually bound to defend. Mr. Speaker, I reserve.
Gentlewoman reserves her time. The gentlewoman for what purpose does the gentlewoman from Minnesota rise?
Madam Chair, I rise in strong opposition to this amendment.
Gentlewoman is recognized.
First, the majority has already eliminated funding for Ukraine security assistance initiative in this bill. It's zero. I personally believe that to be a huge mistake, and that only emboldens Putin. And President Trump seems to be agreeing now because just the other day he announced the decision to provide billions of dollars of equipment to Ukraine through our NATO partners. And I give the credit to the President for that decision. But now we have an amendment to further prohibit any support of Ukraine as they fight to defend their country from an illegal Russian invasion. Putin is attempting to rewrite the map of Europe through use of force. He's doing so in violation of international law. He's deliberately killing civilians, targeting hospitals, schools, destroying the economy and the livelihood of Ukraine in the process. And Putin has put his thugs who are committing war crimes on a mass scale in the United States and the democratic nations of the world. Well, they're putting us on notice, and that's why we must strongly oppose him. If we do not, then he or other authoritarian leaders will likely try something like this again, either in Ukraine or elsewhere in the world. America is not alone in our military support of Ukraine. Our NATO and European allies are continuing to provide billions of dollars to support themselves, and that's in line with the decision that President Trump announced the other day. So let's not abandon the EU or our NATO allies now, and let's not abandon Ukraine. The Ukrainian people did not ask for this war. They deserve our continued support. I urge my colleagues to oppose this amendment. And, Madam Chair, I'd like to yield 60 seconds to the gentleman from California.
From California is recognized for 60 seconds.
I rise in opposition to the gentlelady's amendment. Sadly, we saw for years how the Biden administration failed to provide Ukraine the resources necessary to fight back in an effective way against Russian aggression. Just the other day, President Trump took decisive action to provide weapons to Ukraine to defend against these unprovoked attacks. The President is right to support efforts to ensure innocent lives are no longer lost. He is right to undertake efforts to stop the bloodshed. As he continues to work toward a peaceful solution, we should not now remove the ability to provide what he thinks will help the Ukrainian people to prevent further losses and use as leverage to negotiate a peace agreement, hopefully very soon. With that, I urge a no vote on the amendment and reserve the balance of my time.
Madam Chair, I reserve the balance of my time.
Okay, the gentlewoman reserves, and the gentlewoman from Georgia is recognized.
Mrs. Speaker, how much time do I have remaining?
The gentlewoman has 2.5 minutes remaining.
Thank you, Mrs. Speaker. Democrats used to be the anti-war party, yet every single Democrat voted to fund the war in Ukraine. This funding has been approximately $175 billion of the American people's hard-earned tax dollars, yet the American people are in debt by $37 trillion in debt. It's said that the Ukrainian people didn't ask for that war. Well, the American people didn't ask for this debt. And the American people are not obligated to defend every single country around the world. At what point do we defend our own citizens and their ability to actually be able to afford life in America? As our debt continues to climb because Congress refuses to stop spending on America's last priorities and refuses to stop spending on foreign aid and foreign wars, the American people will have no chance. Now that our border is closed, thank God to Tom Homan and ICE and President Trump and his administration, we are conducting the largest deportation operations our country has ever seen. And we must continue to put America first and continue to address the needs of our own people within our own homeland. This means no more assistance to Ukraine. The only assistance that America should be providing is a pathway to peace, not furthering a war. That is not what the American people want. That is not what the American people voted for. Americans deserve to not have their hard-earned tax dollars fund a bloody and deadly war in Ukraine. We need peace, and we need peace all over the world. This is an unwinnable war in which Americans are footing the bill, and it's resulted in mass casualties in both nations. Americans don't want to pay for murder. Rough estimates show that over 1.5 million people have been killed and injured since the start of this war. A Ukrainian assessment earlier in 2024 placed Ukrainian troop losses at 80,000 killed and 400,000 wounded. Estimates from June of this year show that approximately 1 million Russian soldiers have been killed or wounded. These are people's sons. These are people's brothers, their cousins, their husbands. And an entire generation of Ukrainian men are being wiped out, and so are Russian men. This isn't something the American people should pay for. Thank you, Ms. Speaker.
Gentlewoman from Minnesota is recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Once again, I just want to stress to the body, and I believe this is a huge mistake, but the majority has already eliminated any funding for Ukraine security assistance initiative in this bill. So the amendment accomplishes not cutting any funding. But I would like to just point out again, Madam Chair, when I talked about international war crimes and the previous speaker was talking about, the loss of life in Ukraine, there are 20,000 Ukrainian children who have been kidnapped by Russia, ripped from their homes, the arms of their mothers and fathers. That's a war crime, and we should not be silent on that. And with that, I thank President Trump for now realizing it's important that we come to Ukraine's aid through our NATO partners, and I yield back.
Gentlewoman yields back, and the question is on the amendment offered by the gentlewoman from Georgia. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Those in favor say no.
Those opposed.
Those opposed say no. In the opinion of the chair, the noes have
Madam
it, and the
Speaker.
amendment is not agreed to.
Madam Speaker,
For purpose, does gentlewoman rise?
I ask for the recorded vote.
Okay, pursuant to Clause 6 of Rule 18, further proceedings on the amendment offered by the gentlewoman from Georgia will be postponed.